Hello, and welcome to my channel on budget planning, debt payoff, and life in general. My name is Erin, and my husband and I are on a debt-free journey to pay all $44,000 of our consumer debt in 2021. Today is a Budget With Me check-in day for the week of the 13th to the 19th of January. And each week I check in with my budget and I see how I'm going with sticking to the plan, including my all-important cash and digital spending budget. We have ambitious goals, and this is another tool we are using to prepare ourselves for those goals and to stay accountable. Sticking to the budget is the #1 element for success for us on our debt-free journey. As always, chapters are in the progress bar and timestamps are in the description. So let's get started and see how we did. So it's the middle of the week, and I hope all of you out there are doing really well and that your week is off to a great start, or if you're at the end of the week, that you had a fantastic week, and if you're already at the weekend, that your weekend is going swimmingly. It's been a bit of a crazy week here between our weather. It's our wet season here in Australia, so we've been getting a lot of rain, and so we just go from rain to ridiculously warm and humid, back to rain again, and just keep shifting back and forth between the two. And it'll be like that for probably the rest of January and through a bit of February. So if you hear a torrential downpour during this filming, that is because it just decided to rain out of nowhere, because that is what it does. It rains really heavy and then it just goes back to normal. But we're starting off with going to be looking at a few different things. So we're going to be looking at our spending tracker. We're going to be looking at our cash and digital envelope spending, some of our expense spending, how we did with our sinking funds, because this was a week where we added to our sinking funds, and then also those cash and digital envelopes. So if you watched last week's video, you would see that I was way over budget on groceries. We did get things under control and reined in a bit more this week. So any progress is good progress and gets us one step closer. So I'm going to start just by pulling out some of the sheets that I know we're going to be needing. So we're going to need our spending tracker. We're going to need our bill tracker. We're going to need our sinking funds, and then our cash and digital envelopes, and Transfer Tuesday has already been done. Okay, so let's start with our spending and see how we went. Actually, not too bad this week. I still have white space in the paper. Yay! That is an improvement. Still a lot of things that are highlighted in yellow for groceries. I did have quite a few planned additional items to pick up. So as usual, $100 for my husband. I had to stop and get some wine for cooking. So I don't drink wine and I don't cook with alcohol containing wine. But there are a few places out here, including the bottle shops, that sell what's called an alcohol removed wine. So it actually goes through the entire proper winemaking process. They just remove the alcohol from it, and that is what I use for cooking. I'm just not a fan of the cooking wine that's on the shelves in the stores. It just doesn't taste all that great. I'm still doing that January savings challenge, so I pulled $20. See, I was being optimistic. I pulled $20 from the groceries for that. We did have a couple of meals with seafood, so with salmon and prawns, and I prefer to get that fresh whenever I can. So that was closer to the weekend. I don't like buying seafood on a Monday if I'm going to be having it on the weekend. It's like, ugh, yuck. So I plan to pick that up as as a second item to pick up when I get closer to when that meal is going to be. So the salmon I just got from a local seafood market, and I'm exceptionally lucky that I live pretty much on the water. I live by the bay and by the beach, and so I have easy access to our prawn trawlers. So I can just pop down to the prawn trawlers and pick up prawns. One unplanned but very happily found item, I'm sodium restricted, but I love stir fries, but I can't have soy sauce, so I use coconut aminos. And I finally found a health food store near me that carries the coconut aminos, but as you can see, they are a bit dear in terms of price. Normally I have to order them off of Amazon, or I have to take a drive to go and find them. So now that I know where I can get them, and they make other great ones, including a barbecue sauce and a teriyaki, so really helping with my cooking there. I had a lunch date with some of my work colleagues, and one of them was doing the cooking for us, so I just stopped and picked up a bottle of wine for her and for them to have during the lunch. And then a bit of a different weekly shop as well in terms of picking up groceries. Not everything here is on a meal plan. I unexpectedly have to go back into hospital for 3 days, so I picked up 2 days worth of food for me and for the whole family, and then another 3 days worth of food just for the boys for while I am gone. And they eat a lot different when I'm not around, so they're able to have, a bit more of, the chippies and a little bit less produce, but they still eat a lot more steak, a lot more red meat that is built in. And that got me thinking about actually splitting up my grocery shop into 2 shops and doing 4 days. So shop on Monday for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then on Thursday or Friday to pick up the remaining for the weekend. And since I can have that imposed on me, this week I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. So our groceries only came to $375 this week. Still $25 over budget, but not $275 over budget. So really happy with getting that reined in. Another that you will see stand out is fuel. And so we had to get fuel for all 3 of our vehicles this week. And I have a couple of different numbers that are written down. So what I have in parentheses by each one, that is how much the fuel was per liter that day. It really has no rhyme or reason, but just for me, it helps for that visual tracking of, why this much and the spikes up. So for the bike, $25. For my Jeep, $72. She's a little bit thirsty at times. And then another $34 for the car. So this is because my husband had to take the car because it's raining. He doesn't take the bike in the rain because of obvious reasons. It's safer to be in the car. So fuel was a bit higher for us this week. Actually a bit more on track. It's just lower because I've been working from home. So $131 that was spent on fuel. Also had to top up the dogs' their dog food, and then they also needed treats and their greenies for their teeth and a couple of bones just for happy gnawing on. That was $120 for them. And I know I had just bought in a bag last week, but I got the wrong size. I only got a 10 kilo instead of a 20 kilo. And that is how fast you will go through a 10 kilo bag of food when you have 100 kilos worth of dog. Only one expense that came out this week, and that was the weekly, that was the pool membership, and then also the weekly loan payment. Otherwise, I rounded out with two different doctor's appointments. And yes, even though we have full coverage in Australia, I opt for private cover. So this is why I have private health. so that the specialists that I see, they're actually in the private system. For me, it's just easier. They usually, have higher, faster availability. They are more accessible. And when things need to get done, they need to get done. So I had 2 of those. And one appointment went well, and then the other one, he's like, I need to see you in hospital. We will see you on Wednesday morning. So is what it is, but I get a break from cleaning and cooking for a couple days. My son actually drove me to my appointment because it was a bit further away and I haven't been feeling particularly well. And so I thanked him by taking him out for lunch. So this is the first miscellaneous unplanned spending that I've had because I don't eat takeaway or anything. And we'll see in a minute that we did have some additional money that came in. So I just used $25 from that and bought him lunch and a drink, and then a drink for myself. So I have a miscellaneous of 25. Health came out to 123. I love it when numbers are always in an order, 1, 2, 3. I'm just like, oh, that's so cute. And then the mortgage. So the weekly mortgage coming out for $370. So all up, we had a total of spending and expenses of $2,759. So well below that $4,000. But most importantly, all of these numbers in these categories are tracking pretty well. So if we go back and if we compare to what our budget was, there's quite a few things that we can tick off. We still have a few things that are going to need to get paid going into next week. So this paycheck actually stretches over the 2 weeks, and the paycheck that we get on Wednesday will cover the remainder of that. So I just have penciled in what some of those new totals are going to be, just making sure that we're still on track for 0, and we are. But these are the 2 changes. So both my husband and I, we got cost of living raises. So a lot of companies out here are either contractually bound or they're just nice enough that they do a 1 to 2% raise every year for their employees, just to reflect what the cost of living is here in Australia. So my paycheck has increased to $3,222, obviously after taxes. My husband for $1,029. The child gave us his $50 as usual. And then we had some other income. So we had $47 that came from just a random account that we completely forgot that we had. So there was $47 there. So we got that transferred out and that account closed. And then we also recycle our cans and plastic bottles. We've been doing this. We've been doing it for years. It was actually one of our big additional kind of side incomes when we first started paying off debt the first time. So that was an additional $60. So we had a total income of $4,361, which was $118 higher than what we anticipated. As usual, I did not have the health insurance come out. The cash and digital envelopes, those stayed the same at $921. We did make all of our sinking funds for a total of $756, but I have found errors in 3 of these amounts that starting in the next fortnight, so 2 weeks from now, those will be changed to reflect that. And so we had planned making a credit card payment of $1,149. We ended up making one of $1,322. And that was in my Transfer Tuesday. So if you haven't watched that video, I will link it on a card just up here. And you can go and you can see that we had that extra payment to debt. And then again, I do all of this rounding up. That came to $16.04. And I just tracked it here, even though that's probably not where it goes, but it works for me. So $16.40 just to a spare savings account. So really quite pleased with how we are going, particularly with having some hiccups. Some things like groceries, it might just be that I'm going to have some of those things where I just have, where I have to pop out. And so that's why I was thinking that maybe, splitting things up will help to kind of group things together. And then I can do something like, click and collect, so at store pickup or something along those lines. But we are on track to stay on budget, thank goodness, for the paycheck from the 13th when we fully close that out next week on the 27th, along with that smaller weekly paycheck that we get of my husband's. So week 3, we are looking good. I cannot complain. Well, I could, but there's no purpose in it. I am pleased with it, and as long as I am pleased, it's my budget, it's my family, that is all that matters. So sinking funds, nothing came out of our sinking funds because I try to always have those on the first of the month. Just makes it easier, get it out one time, and then the money can grow during the rest of the month. So $40 contribution to the emergency fund for bringing that up to $1,506. This is the one that I miscalculated because I forgot to factor in that we were starting with $466. And I went back and I refactored that in. Registrations, I must have just fat fingered something here. Again, $235 that was submitted for our registration. So we now have $2,442. Utilities, $940, we added $185, so now we're up to $1,125. Maintenance, $340, added $190, so up to $530. Christmas, another $50 for $100. Birthdays and holidays for another $40, and subscriptions. I also had this off because there were a couple of subscriptions that I forgot about, and then also an additional one that I have picked up. And man, that is the sneaky thing with subscriptions, is that you forget about them until all of a sudden the money comes out, because I always pay mine yearly. I never do monthly. Yearly saves about 20%. But I forget about them until all of a sudden the money comes out, and I'm like, oh, should have remembered that. And then I just have my general notes for the sinking fund. So as I said, I found some mistakes in the amounts for the emergency fund, regos, and subscriptions. So I'm going to change those for the January paycheck, and then I'm going to switch health over into the sinking funds from the 27th. And this is an example of why I really like this approach, because I can make changes quickly, and I can make changes week by week. If I waited till the end of the month to relook at this, or a deep check-in, a deep dive every 3 months is probably when I would be finding some of these mistakes. So I'm finding them now. I'm finding what works now, and picking up more data. The more data you have, the better decisions that you make, and that is really just part of the beauty of this approach. It's ever changing, it's ever evolving as we find what works for us. And then finally, our cash and digital envelopes, and again, that is based off of the spending tracker, and these categories just down at the bottom. So all of that has already been created. So we started off at negative $275 for groceries. Now we do keep a cushion in our bank account. We actually keep a cushion of around $1,500 in there because we're working towards having an entire month of expenses in the account at any given time. So I just took the money from that cushion, and anything that is left over at the end of the month will go back into that cushion, and then the rest will go into savings. So I actually added $275 to bring that to zero, and then the $350 still went over, but manageable, for a negative 25. At least it's only 2 digits, so maybe next time, well, no, there's no way I'd ever only be over by 1 because of how I round. Nothing spent for household, nothing spent on spent. That will be changing. I've got to do a few online orders. The dogs, so they had 70, another 150 was added, 120 taken out, so a balance of 100. Fuel, 131, so this is why this middle top-up is so important. Both with the dogs and with fuel at this point would have depleted our amounts there, so we need to have that top-up. And as I said, this is with only one of us driving to work. Nothing came out in terms of tolls because my husband is on the motorcycle, it's hit and miss of whether or not the camera picks it up, the license plate for tolls. And even when it does, he only has to pay half the tolls as compared to the car. But on the days that he drives the car, he's going to get hit with those. When I drive to work, I have tolls on the way there and tolls on the way back. It is $5.75 each way. So it is usually close to about 11 and a half, almost $12 in tolls just for me. And then double that if my husband is taking the car. So that's why this is staying so low. But eventually I will be back in the office more frequently. So I'll be used to having that budget. Even if I'm not spending it, it'll just go to savings. And then health, I had 50 in there. And then I added the 220. So we had 220 sitting kind of in the side that was left over from last year. I needed that. Spent 123. That dropped down to 147. So all up with our cash and digital envelopes, $732 that was spent this week. So as compared to last week, where our total in spending was 1,182, back down to 749. So that's a good number, and that's one that we will keep targeting. Otherwise, everything went, went pretty well this week. My husband and my son were really good about being helpful in not eating the ingredients, or at least when they did, letting me know about it, or as my son was clever enough to do, just leaving the container out on the counter so that I knew when I had to grab that container to wash it. But hey, that's par for the course sometimes, I guess. So for lessons learned is really about paying attention and identifying areas that need to be modified or changed and making those changes immediately. And yes, it takes a little bit of time, but this is also why I use Excel and I use fill-in printables, because I can just go in, quick change one number, it changes everything else for me. I can ensure that we're still within budget, and that's just an easier process. So a good check-in, a good Transfer Tuesday, overall in general, a pretty darn good week. I will take it. So hopefully you guys have all had a good week too. If you've done your check-in, go ahead and drop in the comments how you're doing, how you're traveling with that. And are you staying on budget? Are you over? Are you under? Are there any challenges that you're finding, or things going along just swimmingly? It's always interesting to see how many other people, what other people are doing. Does your budget look the same now as it did even 3 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago when you made it for the new year? So that takes care of everything for that. And we are ready to jump right back in with a clean slate and get started on everything for the 4th week. Can't believe it. January is flying by. Starting to get ready for February already. So those are some of the upcoming videos. As always, remember to choose kindness, show gratitude, and always keep a positive mindset. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.